Rain pounded against the glass doors of the small-town pharmacy, blurring the world outside into streaks of silver and gray. Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and damp coats. A woman stood at the counter, clutching a small white prescription bag in trembling hands. Her name was Maggie Turner, and tonight, she had run out of both time and hope. Her mother's medication sat in that bag, the pills that kept her heart beating, the pills Maggie could no longer afford. The pharmacist's voice had been kind but final. "I'm sorry, ma'am, your insurance doesn't cover this refill. It's $186.47. The words echoed in her mind like a sentence. She had checked her wallet twice, as if maybe a miracle 20 would appear. It didn't. There were only a few wrinkled bills, a couple of coins, and a receipt from the gas station where she'd put just enough fuel in her old Chevy to make it home. Is there any discount program?" Maggie asked, her voice breaking as she tried to keep her composure. Her mother, Evelyn, was waiting in the car outside, her breathing shallow, her color pale. The pharmacist shook his head apologetically. "We already applied the manufacturer's coupon. That's the lowest I can go." Maggie's fingers tightened on the counter. The rain outside felt like it was pouring directly into her chest. She had been juggling 3 jobs since her father died 2 years ago: waitress, cashier, part-time cleaner at the high school. But between rent, groceries, and her mother's mounting medical bills, the math never worked. She looked down, ashamed, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll come back tomorrow." The pharmacist nodded, pity softening his face. "Of course. I'll hold it for you." Maggie gathered her coat, blinking hard to stop the tears. But as she turned, a man's voice broke through the quiet of the nearly empty store. "Wait," he said. It was deep, steady, the kind of voice that made people stop without knowing why. Maggie turned and saw a tall man in his early 40s standing a few feet behind her. He was dressed simply, a flannel shirt, faded jeans, a baseball cap damp with rain. His gray eyes met hers, calm and kind. He stepped forward, nodding toward the counter. "Put it on my bill." For a moment, Maggie couldn't speak. The words didn't make sense. She blinked, thinking she must have misheard. I can't let you do that," she said quickly. The man gave a small smile, the corners of his eyes creasing. "You're not letting me. I'm offering." The pharmacist looked between them, hesitant. "Sir, are you sure?" "Yeah," the man said simply, pulling out his wallet. "Ring it up." Maggie felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Please, don't. You don't even know me." "I don't need to," he replied gently. "But I've been where you are. Trust me, sometimes a little help makes all the difference." The pharmacist processed the payment quietly while Maggie stood frozen, her throat tight, her vision blurred with tears she could no longer hide. When the man handed her the small bag, his fingers brushed hers, warm, solid, real. "Take care of her," he said softly. "And take care of yourself, too." She wanted to say thank you, wanted to ask his name, wanted to understand why a stranger would do something so selfless, but before she could find the words, he was gone. The bell over the door jingled, and the man stepped into the rain, disappearing into the gray evening. Maggie stood there, clutching the medicine like it was gold, tears spilling freely now. When she returned to the car, her mother looked up weakly. "Did they have it, sweetheart?" Maggie nodded, smiling through tears. "Yes, Mom, we're good now." Evelyn reached out and squeezed her daughter's hand. "God provides, doesn't he?" Maggie nodded again, though her voice caught. "Yeah, he does." That night, as Evelyn slept peacefully for the first time in days, Maggie sat by the small kitchen table, the glow of a single lamp illuminating her journal. She opened to a blank page and wrote, "To the man in the flannel shirt, whoever you are, you didn't just buy medicine tonight. You bought my hope back." Weeks passed. Life went on, but something inside Maggie had changed. The act of kindness from that stranger lingered in her thoughts, reshaping how she saw the world. She found herself looking for ways to pass it on, paying for a veteran's coffee at the diner, leaving grocery gift cards anonymously at the church food pantry, checking in on her elderly neighbor. It was as if one spark had ignited a quiet fire of compassion. Then, one cold December afternoon, as snow fell softly outside, Maggie returned to the pharmacy again. She was picking up another refill, still struggling, still juggling bills, but doing her best. As she waited in line, her eyes caught a young mother ahead of her. The woman was holding a toddler wrapped in a threadbare blanket, whispering soothing words as the child coughed softly against her shoulder. The pharmacist's voice came next, quiet but apologetic, almost identical to the words Maggie had heard weeks before. "I'm sorry, miss. Without insurance, that antibiotic is $112. The young woman's face fell. She bit her lip, glancing down at her child, then at her wallet. I'll have to come back." Something inside Maggie shifted. The memory came rushing back, the rain, the trembling, the man's calm voice saying, "Put it on my bill." Before she even realized she was speaking, Maggie stepped forward. "Wait," she said softly. "Put it on mine." The young mother turned, startled. "Oh no, you don't have to." "I know," Maggie interrupted gently, smiling through the lump in her throat. "But please, I want to." The pharmacist froze, recognizing her. For a heartbeat, it felt like time had folded in on itself, two lives crossing just as hers had crossed with that man's. Tears filled the young mother's eyes as she whispered, thank you so much." Maggie handed over her card, her hands shaking just like before, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from something purer, something she couldn't name but could feel in every heartbeat. When the mother left with the medicine, holding her child close, Maggie stood there quietly. The pharmacist smiled softly and said, "You know, kindness like that, it comes full circle." Maggie smiled faintly, looking out the window where snow was still falling. "Yeah," she said, "I think you're right." Months later, on a spring morning, Maggie drove her mother to a small cafe on Main Street. The place was bright and cozy, smelling of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls. As they sat by the window, Evelyn's laughter returned, soft and musical, the way it used to sound before illness and bills and endless worry. While Maggie paid at the counter, she glanced up, and froze. There, on the cafe wall among dozens of photos, was a framed picture of the man in the flannel shirt. He was standing with a group of people in front of the volunteer fire department, his arm slung around another man's shoulder, grinning. The caption beneath read, "In loving memory of David Harris, our friend, our neighbor, our hero." Maggie's breath caught. She called to the waitress, her voice trembling. "Who is that?" The waitress smiled gently. "That's David. He used to come here all the time. He passed away last year, heart attack. Nicest man you'd ever meet. He helped everyone, never asked for anything back." Maggie felt tears fill her eyes again, but this time, they carried a strange peace. She nodded, whispering, "Yeah. I believe that." When she returned to her seat, Evelyn noticed the tears. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Maggie smiled softly. "Nothing's wrong, Mom. Everything's right." Outside, the sky cleared, sunlight breaking through the clouds like a promise. Maggie reached across the table, taking her mother's hand. "You know, Mom," she said quietly, "kindness doesn't end. It just keeps moving, from one person to the next." Her mother squeezed her hand. "That's how the good Lord keeps the world spinning," she said with a smile. And in that little cafe, surrounded by the hum of life and laughter, Maggie realized that sometimes the smallest gestures, a word, a dollar, a moment of compassion, can echo longer than a lifetime. Because one man's kindness had saved her mother's life, and in turn, had saved her own.